Good day, guys. This is Sandra again. Today, I wanted to give a bit of a background to the first video that I've made about my passion for creatures great and small, where I've briefly mentioned Jesus, Mary Magdalene, and divine truth as a way of life. So I think it's really worth giving it a background because it kind of feels like without the background, no one is ever going to understand what I was trying to say in the first place. So basically, for the past 14 years, I have been listening to the teachings of divine truth that are shared by Jesus and Mary. So yes, Jesus from the Bible is back. Not the way that Jesus is described in the Bible, but real Jesus is back to speak for himself about who he is and what he wants to share with the world. So I have been sort of hiding this part of me, despite having kind of public presence a lot in my last job, where I've actually spoken on stages, and there are lots of videos out there of me doing things and talking about things, mostly about nature and my passion for fungi. However, I've always hidden this part, as I said in the last video, about the creator, the God that made these beautiful things that I'm completely in love with. So I want to give a background to how it came about that I actually discovered God and God's truth. And because I have been sort of in these two worlds, hiding my personal life, which has involved, more so in the last 2 years, being involved with Jesus and Mary through the God's Way organization, where we do a lot of land work and recovery, learning about the principles of love and God from Jesus and Mary directly, but also doing activities via God's Way, which I'll describe in the future. I have been really trying to hide this thing that I'm engaged in and that I listen to and I've been listening to for the past 14 years. So I've decided this is just insane because it's the most important thing that anyone could ever learn about. It's way more important than the biodiversity I talk about. It's about how to bring about changes to the world where love can predominate. And so automatically the things that I care about will actually come back into harmony and will regenerate. So hiding the most important truth that there is to know, which is the reception of God's love that is available to us, to any one of us at any given moment, hiding that by being afraid that people will judge me for being involved with Jesus and Mary, which is really, really condescending to them actually. It's just been insane. So I really feel, no, this is a part of me that I want to share now, and I feel like it's so selfish to keep it all to myself. It's like imagine the most incredible ice cream that has ever been made. It's the most yummiest thing anyone could ever taste. And there is an absolute infinite supply of this ice cream, and me hoarding it all to myself. That's how selfish it gets. That's how I have been acting in the past 14 years, but in the past 2 years, I've been really learning about how to actually get this ice cream. And this ice cream I'm talking about is not ice cream, but God's love. It is such an incredible substance that we can all receive. It can actually transform us. You can think about it in terms of the caterpillar turning into a butterfly, which I'll do a whole video on the similarity between how our soul can be transformed by God's love through this process of receiving it and turning into a new creature, the divine angel. And I've been so ashamed of that, of learning about that. I can't now understand how I could have been, but the exciting thing is that this is real, it's happening, it's available for everybody, and everybody should have it. Because it's great. Not that I know much about it yet, but I'm learning, and the more I learn about it and the more little experiments I do and experiences I have, I just get so excited about this potential of people having this love in their hearts and what that will mean for the world. No world hunger, no diseases, no inequality between nations, inequality between people, where every one of us is this expressive, kind and loving, passionate person that just wants to share what they're learning and share themselves with the world. And this is where I feel it's worth to speak about so much. So I will give a little bit of a background to my life because I think it's important to show like, why I have been so resistive to sharing this incredible gift that I have myself received. Why am I hiding that? And there are various reasons for this, emotional reasons, but my background has been that I've come from a Roman Catholic upbringing in a communist country in Poland. And really, that sort of flavor of Catholicism is extremely harsh, extremely judgmental, extremely punishing. And this is the sort of environment I grew up with. So the idea of God has always turned me off. I've been trying to run away from God since I've been in Australia, since I was 12 years old, trying to do everything but think about God. I have blamed God for the very awful things that have happened to me in my life as a kid. And we all do that. And it's unfair because God isn't the God that religions tell us about. God is very, very different to that. And I've always seen that in nature. I've always seen that God must be good. God must be benevolent because nature is so incredibly beautiful, intelligent, giving, sharing, collaborative. So how can this God of the Roman Catholic Church in communist Poland equal the God that created all the creatures, great and small, that I'm absolutely in love with? And this is the part where reconciling that has been very difficult for me. But the more time Jesus and Mary spent on sharing the truth about God and how for us individually it is not only possible but extremely important for our happiness to develop this relationship, the more I started to feel about, what do I really feel about God? What do I really feel about love? Because, of course, Jesus and Mary encourage us to be very truthful with ourselves. And divine truth is about universal truth, God's truth. And that's the truth about everything, anything that exists in the universe is based upon God's truth. And you're either living in line with that truth or you're living out of harmony with that truth, which means living a lie. And this is what I feel like my life has been. It's been all about fake it till you make it, rather than just being like, do this thing, because this thing now I'm starting to feel is the most important thing I can do for myself. It is very difficult. It is difficult. It is so simple. It's as simple as asking for God's love and opening your heart and longing for that love with all your passionate heart. But you need to first find the passion for God if you don't have it. And I guess that has to develop, and you have to find your own way through what's blocking you from even wanting to hear the word God. Because that's how I was. I became a scientist and very regimented at that in the way I lived my life, very sort of communist and very harsh and judgmental and hard with myself particularly, but also with everything and everyone. And God's love is there to soften this and allow me to feel like that I no longer want to be this person, that I no longer want to live a very austere life that isn't the way God designed me to be, to live. So just to backtrack a tiny bit, as a teenager, having lived through this sort of, I would say, dark turmoil that the country was in that I grew up in, and then coming to Australia and trying to deal with the nuances of a lack of language, lack of English, lack of understanding of this new culture I was in, I was very depressed. And also my mum got remarried. The man that she married, I felt, was quite harsh with me. And instead of feeling how bad I felt, I turned to drugs. And I continued to use drugs for a few years, where I was addicted to pot. So addicted that my life was falling into ruin. And despite this desire that I had to actually follow education, because I've always loved education, I've always loved school, I sort of wanted to numb my feelings out. But I realized that by numbing myself out through, marijuana and alcohol, I was actually destroying any possibility of gaining more understanding about God's creation, it turns out to be. But really being interested in biology and the sciences and psychology and ancient history. I'm just a really passionate person that loves to learn about the world, but particularly about the creatures that live on Earth. So once I realized that this was holding me back, probably at the age of 16, before year 11 and 12 exams and stuff, I was like, okay, I've got to get off this stuff. I've got to straighten up, and I've got to start studying, and I've got to get into university. So that was my sort of saving grace, this passion that I have for education or being educated. However, despite having a scientific career where I've done a PhD, I was still drinking a lot. And drinking, obviously, to suppress your emotions is not a great thing. It's a terrible thing for the soul. It's a terrible thing for us. It destroys the body. You know, I've been drinking since I was 14 till I was 30. And it was like these little things that led me to truth. I gave up eating meat at the beginning of my university degree, which was agricultural science. I couldn't handle the pain and suffering that animals went through. I didn't see it as a right thing to do, and I did my own research on what it would be like to not consume meat, because I was raised with the idea that you have to have meat or you'll die. And every time I traveled to Poland, people were like, you got to eat meat. And my family was like, you know, crazy about meat being essential for your life. And so I was like, well, it can't be, because I'm in so much pain eating it. It's wrong. It's just wrong. I stopped drinking, which ended my marriage as a result, because we're both drinking heavily. So these little adjustments were being made towards following some of God's laws. And I suppose somehow eventually it led me to discover truth. And I was in so much pain about all kinds of things, about how I've treated my partners. Just life was unhappy, and I was only young. You know, I was only early 30s then, and I was just like, there's got to be more. There's got to be more to life than this, and I've got to be able to change somehow or do something. So throughout my science career, I've just basically, as an adult, decided, well, there's still no God. I knew there was something more, and I knew that our unhappiness has to end at some point. I found Buddhism, and I became very, very engrossed in wanting to sort of force myself into being celibate and force myself into restricting my life to such an extent, believing that my desires were the background of my evil. Because, you know, my relationships were working out. I had a very tumultuous marriage where a lot of it was to do with me wanting a lot of things from my ex-partner, just really not seeing all the pain I was carrying and how I was bringing that into this relationship. So I've decided, well, just don't have one. Just don't have relationships. If you can just get rid of your sexual addictions, just get rid of them by not having any sex. Like, very harsh and very, very restrictive. And Buddhism was perfect for that. It's all about oppression, suppression, oppress yourself, oppress your desires, don't be an individual, just try to achieve nirvana through meditation. While I was trying to be all Buddhist, I did come across the Divine Truth teaching. Someone told me about Jesus being back on earth. I mocked and mocked and laughed. But the stuff this person was telling me sounded really logical and sounded really beautiful. And it sounded like, why not? Like, who am I to judge? I did judge. Anyway, I've sort of gotten really, really interested. And without even me really looking for it, I ended up going to someone's house and finding the Divine Truth DVDs, a stack of them. And I wanted to watch. And I watched The Secrets of the Universe first, because a woman that owned the DVDs recommended that this is the first thing I should watch. But there were really other good titles, like Sex and Sexuality, for example, which was the one I wanted to watch first. So much for my celibacy. Once I watched that first video, The Secrets of the Universe, and Jesus started talking about who he is, I just cried. I grieved like I've never grieved before, it felt like. It's almost like all the things he was saying, not just about him being Jesus, but all the other things he was saying about soulmates, that our soul has another part of us that is our soulmate. So the real partner that God made for us, that we are a part of, the one soul that we are a part of exists and is there, and that's the one for us. All these truths, or giant truths, I should say, maybe just I like the idea of those truths, or maybe I've been impressed from the spirit world. My guides perhaps were trying to teach me these things already. I don't know, but I was just completely overwhelmed. And so I started listening to Divine Truth. And I really wanted to meet Jesus and Mary. So I felt to go and meet them by traveling to Kingaroy. But it was more also, I really loved the idea that Jesus proposed that this land that was bought by a few people that was very damaged through cattle grazing and tree poisoning was up for us to recover and show the process of God's love entering our hearts and how that would affect the land. How ecosystem recovery, how soil restoration and ecosystem restoration is best achieved through our changes in our own hearts and applying the principles of divine truth and receiving God's love and therefore affecting the environment, plus working on the land to, of course, do that as a physical reparation that we need to make in order for the ecosystems to be repaired. And I loved this idea so much. I was on the plane going to to Sumatra at the time, when I heard this talk that Jesus gave. And I was like, stop the plane! I wanted to get off the plane. I literally wanted to knock on the pilot's cockpit and ask him to turn around so I could get off the plane and not go, but actually go and find out how this is possible, and got really excited. So that's how I ended up here, and I'm still living here all these years later. Jesus is the first child of God that decided to investigate and experiment with actually the truth of God, that God is there for us as a personal being. And that is the most difficult thing, I think, for most of us to learn. The very beginnings of when I first heard divine truth were very difficult. It was a place of time when I was literally delusional. I believed all of this with my head, basically repeating what Jesus was saying to myself, taking it on as truth. But in my heart, I was still very terrified of God, up until recently, actually, because I haven't looked at my Catholic upbringing and how difficult it was to live like that as a kid, believing God was this harsh, punishing old man. And when I say it is the most difficult, it is because inside of us, we all feel that we are not worthy of love. We all feel bad about ourselves, whether we mask it all with feeling like we're great. There's so much turmoil. No one has ever taught us about love. Our parents were never taught about love. And all of us have this multi-generational, terrible feeling that we are our own masters. We have our own laws. We should be able to make our own laws, just in avoidance of having some greater authority that rules this kingdom that we live in, this universe that we live in, that someone created it, and there are specific laws by which we might have to live by if we want to actually have a fabulous life. Most people just want to rebel against that. I know I have. My whole life I've been in extreme rebellion against law, and I'm done because it's led me nowhere. It's only led to my own self-destruction and a lot of pain and suffering in both my life and how I treat other people. So divine truth is all about undoing all of the damage, repenting and feeling what we've done to other people, feeling how we treat ourselves and others, experiencing the feelings, experiencing the reality about ourselves in order so that we can learn truth from God. And when our error leaves, when we actually feel through it and we ask for God's love to enter us, it actually, like a balm on a wound, it heals, it removes the causes of why we even had that error in the first place, why we have the sin, the missing the mark of love, missing God's standards of law. So that has been the biggest block, my rebellious, God detesting, God hating avoidance of grief, avoidance of pain, which I've decided to use anger against. And been angry about religion for so long that it was actually blocking me to see that I actually have a lot of grief and pain about how I was raised as a Catholic and the lies I've been taught about God. And that was huge for me. That was just such a big block. And I'm sure I've still got most of it. It's just that I started to work on it because I realized like I have to really see what I truly believe about God if I'm really to learn about God from God. The relationship is about the truth. If you don't have a truthful relationship, you will never be happy and you will never actually have the relationship. So we know that from our relationships. When we lie to our partners, when our partners lie to us, it just doesn't work, and it's the same. And the same with friendships. They can't get closer if they're not based on a truthful, transparent interaction. So self-expression and being honest and truthful about how we feel is another thing to learn. And divine truth means us being in truth. And that means our truth as we see it at that point in time. And it's mostly completely out of line. But oftentimes we actually do know and feel what's right or wrong. And there are things in our interactions where they feel off, but we never say anything. We just sort of put our head down, like, you're not allowed to say anything, just don't do it, don't rock the boat, don't make a mess out of this, let's just all compromise, let's just all be quiet. It's just not a way to function, because when you look at nature, once again, everything is expressive. When birds want to mate, the males express themselves. There is an expression. There is no hiding. There is no innuendo. They tell the female they want to mate with them, and the female makes a call that attracts the male. There's all these beautiful examples in nature. The butterflies chasing each other. There is no, let's not express this part of me. It's all about expression. It's all about truth. God's truth is just being shown to us throughout nature, throughout the environment, and learning from that has been a big deal for me as well, because I live like in the opposite direction of all of that. Let's oppress, let's not talk about these things. Let's not share myself. Let's not share with anyone about this thing that I've been doing for the past 14 years. It's just really insane. I've been insane. And that's how it is. That's just the nature of, of, I suppose, wanting to grow. You start somewhere and then it changes over time if you really want truth and you really want to develop into the butterfly from the caterpillar. That's just as simple as it is. But in that chrysalis stage, there's resistance. There's literally immune system cells in the chrysalis trying to suppress the formation of a butterfly. We're in the same boat. Our era, everything we've been programmed with, has to change. It has to leave. It has to be examined. It has to be removed. And without that removal and the asking for the truth from the Creator, and wanting to learn the truth and getting help from others that are learning the truth at the same time. Without those steps being taken and without the turmoil that it brings and without the complete dissolution of ourselves, complete dissolvement, we need to be able to completely dissolve ourselves, just like a caterpillar does, almost completely dissolves itself when it becomes a chrysalis. So this is where it's important to mention that there is a period of time, and that period of time will last some time unless we're completely going to receive divine love, God's love, all the time, which is the whole point, to really desire passionately with all our hearts God's truth and God's love, which I'm nowhere near yet, but I feel like the little bits of understanding that I do now have from my own experiences drive a desire forward that this might be a possibility, that this is something that can be achieved. The reality of God's love being possible as something that I can personally have, which I have so much resistance to even feeling like it's something I can personally have. I have so much pain around that it's very even difficult for me to ask or long for. I don't even know what it means to long for something. Literally, I do not even understand the meaning of that word and how it feels. But this is such an important, integral part of us to be like a child with an open heart and learn to develop this longing for God's love in order for us to feel like we are God's pinnacle of creation, which is another big thing that I just don't want to know about it. I want to hold on to my own opinions of who humans are and what we're like. And I've lived in this judgment of humanity, this judgment, this really harsh judgment of myself and humans, just completely not what God feels about us. And I'm learning that it isn't through this emotional realizations of the false beliefs, the lies, the sin, the missing the mark of love, missing the mark of God's loving truth being imbibed. And the only way that can really happen is through this desire to know and learn God's truth, all for the purpose of actually having a great benefit to our life in terms of happiness, growth, finding our soulmate, having this relationship with the Creator that made everything. Imagine learning from God directly. And this is something we can all do. Like, that is so exciting. Imagine God telling you the very things that you love, that you're passionate about, or discovering any truth and God being able to show you and tell you. And most importantly, let you know how it feels, where you can actually feel what God feels. Like, to me, that is just like, right now, I'm just super excited about it. And even though I don't yet know really what it all feels like, it's starting to feel like reality. It's starting to feel like it's something maybe I personally can do. My faith in that is so small. It is so small. It is just beginning. But where do I start to tell people about it? Do I wait till I become at one with God, way beyond perfect angel of God? And in the meantime, God's truth is being shelved in someone's little bedroom where they're forging their own little path to actually open their hearts to God's love. That's not how it's going to happen, and that's becoming apparent. And this is why I'm talking about it, because I do feel passionate about it, and there's this amazing opportunity right now to receive this love, which might not be there in the future. There's also God's Way, which is an organization that Jesus and Mary have a lot to do with. And this organization is what has helped me to open up my heart over the last 2 years. And that's because Jesus and Mary's feedback, Jesus and Mary's teachings are being presented as a gift from them to us. And we happen to receive that gift because we happen to want to become volunteers for God's Way. And God's Way organization is all about living God's way, living our life in accordance with how God designed for us to live our life. And that means being truthful, transparent, open, expressive, being real, being ourselves, but also wanting to see the gunk that's inside of us and deal with the gunk, remove the junk, clean up the soul, make room for God's love. That's basically it in a nutshell. I'm really excited. I'm writing the lovinggod.blog as well. So I'm going to post my own experiences and also make these videos because I feel like it's time to let God's love out of the cage. It's been caged up, and I know that you'd need to be at a certain point to even feel excited about it, and I haven't been at that point, but now the point is starting to grow, and I'm like, okay, this is the point. I'm going to do it. So it's fun, and it can be a lot of fun, and I can see that while we have to feel our own pain while we go through this, because the pain has to leave, so it's quite a painful process, emotionally painful process. I'm like, but why would you want to keep it in there and take it into every relationship and every interaction? And it's just us being fake and unreal and living in fear, and fear is just like lie. It's a lie. It's a lie. I don't want to live a lie for the rest of my existence on earth. I don't want to live a lie for the rest of my existence in the spirit world. I want people to be happy. I want me to maybe be happy as well. I would love to experience, I'd love to experience what it's like to get to know God. I would. And even though it have seemed like an impossibility, I feel like now maybe now it is maybe possible. And I would love for other people to have that as well. And many of you might be way more brave to go and embrace this. So for me to keep this to myself is very, very selfish. There's loads of yummiest ice cream you can imagine to have. Not that I particularly love ice cream, but God's love is there for all of us. And maybe you will be the next person to embrace that love. Embrace it and have it in your heart and have your life changed to the best of possibilities beyond the greatest desires you might have ever even dreamed of having. And if this is what this video will do for other people, I pray that it does, because what else is there? What else is there? Living in pain, in war, in hunger and starvation. We're destroying the world with our sin. We're destroying our world with the lies that we live by. And those lies have to go if we're going to change this world for a better place. And I want future generations of children to experience nature, to experience themselves. I would love that for other people. I feel like it's really, really important, and it's possible. And I see my friends grow. And I see Jesus and Mary grow. Over the past 14 years, I've been watching them grow and become these amazing butterflies. And as you watch other people do it, you do want it for yourself eventually. You start sort of seeing, yeah, it's possible, and maybe I can have it too. So I encourage all of you that have come across this video to research divine truth. I'll put in links, the most important ones that I feel might inspire you or might interest you. There's loads of videos on YouTube, thousands of hours of recordings by Jesus and Mary, and they are going to do even better recording in their new acquired state that they're in now, with their new growth that they have been through over the past few years. And that is just going to be the most wonderful thing to experience, to learn directly from them, and the feedback that they've given me personally. Without this feedback, I wouldn't have grown. And I know that I haven't grown much yet, but I just feel like there's some changes, something's happening, something is happening, and I'm not going to squash that down anymore. And I couldn't have had that happen without their dedication to loving humanity, to loving us, to wanting to share God's truth, without their huge heart-based desire, this huge desire that they have to share God's truth on this planet. Let's not squander it. That's what I'm saying to myself. I am no longer going to. It's wonderful to finally break free out of my cage. Bye for now.